Come on in, everybody. Let me know if you can hear me. If it sounds weird at all. I'm trying this call-in number thing again today, and it might be messing with the audio. If it's not, great. Welcome back to the Holler. Justin here, tnholler.com is where you can find us, at the TN Holler on Twitter and Facebook. And we have all of these other amazing hollers all across the state, thanks to your support. So, as always, chip in a few bucks monthly if you can. It goes a long way. And if you're looking for a home in Tennessee, do it through Elisa Parker. She supports us, and you can support us by spreading the word about her. And also, if anybody needs a lawyer, Abby Rubenfeld is a good one and a good person and supports us also. Today, I'm just going to do that thing where I talk about what's in our email today, and we go over some of the issues that are facing our state. Tampa, Florida, good to see you, John. Whitney says she hears me. That's great to hear. I appreciate that. Let me know if it sounds weird at all. And we're doing that thing where if you have something you want to say, call in 615-395-2016. Say whatever you want. Trying to open up the lines. I tried to do this once before, and I had one caller, our buddy Gapper, and it worked. So love to hear from you about some of this stuff. Today, going over the email, it's going to send you to Talking Points memo. The big issue that we mentioned today is this Talking Points memo plot to overturn an American election article that they have. Basically, hang on, let me get rid of this music. Basically, they got a trove of texts that Mark Meadows sent and received in and around the insurrection, and they call it a plot to overturn an American election. They said 34 members of Congress texted with Meadows about the plot to overturn the election, and what makes it relevant to Tennessee is our old pal Mark Green was in there. And Mark Green sent Meadows a text saying Dick Morris is saying state legislature can intervene and declare Trump the winner in these states. So, and then he sent a Newsmax link basically giving supposedly Meadows this roadmap to overturning the election. If you remember, Meadows was Donald Trump's chief of staff at the time, and very clearly implying that this would be a way to overturn the election. He asked about it. His comment, I don't know if you can see that, it's small, but it says that Green suggested his ideas came from people in his district rather than the congressman himself. And then the quote is, Congressman Green was passing along what constituents were sending him. So that's his defense, is that, I'm just passing along what constituents are sending me. It's not really me saying it, it's my constituents. That's why I'm sending it to the president's chief of staff, as though that somehow absolves him of responsibility, even if that's true, which, I will go ahead and call bullshit on. But let's say he got a message, hey, maybe these legislatures can just declare Trump the winner. If you're going to send that to the president's chief of staff, that's on you. And if you're going to try to overturn democracy, at least have the balls, Mark, to stand by it and not hide behind some mystery constituent. So we're highlighting that today. Hi, Patty in Memphis. Highlighting that today because I think it's important that Mark's constituents call him out on this, that we not let things like this normalize. I think the media needs to hold him accountable for participating in what was very clearly an attempt to overturn an American election. And it's important to keep in mind that Mark is a former Army doctor, loves to talk about his service. He wrote a book about my night with Saddam. Won't talk about his discharge, which, we mention from time to time that his discharge is redacted. Full disclosure, I ran against him, so that's how I know that. And when a constituent mentioned it in our Facebook comments, we never hear from Mark. But the one time we heard from Mark was when we mentioned his redacted discharge, and a constituent jumped in and said that it might not be honorable, which is the reason, and he got offended and called her a liar. So all that to say, he's a soldier, and it's even more concerning when a soldier is so willing to throw out an American election that so many people have fought and died to protect our right to conduct. And that's why Lindsay, who is running for Congress, I don't think she lives in Tennessee anymore. She said, "It makes my stomach turn knowing a man who actively worked to undermine democracy, quote unquote, represents thousands of military families at Fort Campbell. Her husband was deployed multiple times to combat terrorism. Meanwhile, he's back home encouraging it." So, yeah, Fort Campbell, Clarksville, this is your guy trying to figure out how to disenfranchise an entire country and overturn an election based on what we all know are blatant lies to install a guy as president again. And this is deeply concerning, and everybody should have questions about it. Everybody should be asking Mark about it. Gibran, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, calls seditious traitors. I mean, strong words being used, and rightfully so. That attack on our Capital was a big deal and not to be minimized. And it's important that we call it out. So I hope people will continue to ask Mark Green about his participation in this. I think it's really important that we don't shrug it off, that we don't let it go, mainly because the attack is still ongoing. You know, Trump's running again. And I think the lesson that they learned from the last time was where they came up short, how to come back stronger. Thankfully, the midterms went better than they could have gone, but we should not be relaxing. And now, a big, powerful tool to get out information, and I'm segueing into the other sort of big story that's in our email today, and I think is at the top of mind for a lot of people, whether you'd like to be talking about it or not, is Elon and this Twitter thing, which, you know, I'm a big Twitter user. It's getting harder and harder to feel good about that lately. And Elon has brought back a lot of people that, you know, frankly deserve to be kicked off. Now they're acting like through these Twitter files that are not telling us anything we didn't know, that it was somehow completely wrong to get rid of Trump and other people that were inciting insurrection and violence. And it's worth pointing out that even Rep. McCarthy, the leader of the Republicans, wondered aloud if some of the Republicans, like Marjorie Greene, et cetera, could be kicked off of Twitter. And he had no problem with Trump being kicked off after the insurrection. Now, since then, their spines were removed. And, you know, now they are acting like it was this huge disgrace. And Elon has been fanning those flames by taking over Twitter and releasing these Twitter files, which again have not told us anything we didn't know. We knew that Twitter had second thoughts about some of the actions that they took. They were in a tough spot. They didn't want to be used to foment disinformation the way they had in 2016. So they were understandably trying to figure that out. They didn't get everything right. But what the Twitter files show more than anything else is that they were trying to figure it out, and that at the end of the day, someone's got to make a call. And Elon didn't buy Twitter to erase the lines. He bought Twitter to be the one to draw them. And we see that more and more. He hasn't put Alex Jones back on the platform because he knows what it's like to lose a child. And so when it affects him personally, he makes a different decision. and was at a Dave Chappelle concert. And the big news from the Dave Chappelle concert was he went up and he got his ass booed off in San Francisco. Let's go ahead and we'll watch a little bit of that.
I don't want to hurt you. Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for the richest man in the world.
Now, this went on for a long time. There were a lot of boos. He got his ass booed off, and it was awkward. And Chappelle tried to save him a little bit, but it wasn't working. And afterwards, Elon went on and tweeted that there was a fight in the audience, and that's why he wasn't able to say anything. But then he deleted that because that's obviously not true. And then the next morning he woke up and he tweeted that the woke mind virus is either defeated or nothing else matters. He tweeted that the next morning. So he's mad. He thinks it's because people are woke that they booed him and not just because he's an asshole and that people are mad. And I guess what I would be surprised by would be his surprise. Like if he really was surprised that that happened in San Francisco, then he is in a more of a bubble than any of us could possibly imagine, which is pretty scary. The headlines skewered him understandably and rightly. You know, he's been doing all kinds of garbage. And so this was a moment, hopefully, where maybe Elon realized that he has fewer fans than he really thinks. I thought Shamel's post here was right on, where he asks, what is the woke mind virus? Was the civil rights movement woke? And I think that's really the point and the question a lot of us need to be asking now, which is, you know, what do they mean by woke? You know, we've been talking about it a lot. To me, it just means progress. It means anything that they don't like. It means whatever they want it to mean. You know, and anybody who's using woke as a pejorative at this point is just telling on themselves. And, you know, for him to be out there kicking and screaming about woke, it just really shows us where his heart truly lies. And it's going to make a lot of people think twice about buying Tesla stock, which is why Tesla stock has plummeted. One thing that I think is worth pointing to is another guy that loves to use the pejorative woke is DeSantis. And DeSantis fired or removed a U.S. attorney in Florida. And when asked why, they said it was because he was woke, a woke U.S. attorney. So in court, the people that were defending the attorney, or maybe the attorney himself, said, well, what do you mean by woke? And asked what woke means more generally, DeSantis's lawyer said, the belief there are systemic injustices in American society and the need to address them. Again, the belief there are systemic this is DeSantis's lawyers. The belief there are systemic injustices in American society and the need to address them. I'm sorry, if you don't believe that, then I don't know what world you're looking at or what country you're living in. The opposite to woke is asleep, Christine says. Absolutely right. And Bobby says they need to be tied down and define woke like DeSantis's lawyers has to. Yeah. Their definition is that there are systemic injustices. Of course, there are systemic injustices in this country. And the fact that Elon Musk doesn't acknowledge that when this is a guy who grew up in apartheid South Africa, that kind of tells you all you need to know about what they're really getting at when they complain about wokeism and the woke mind virus. It's really just anything they don't like, anything that challenges the status quo. It's progress. It's people who support progress, who are aware of the problems and want to move us forward. So I'm a little bit tired of letting them use woke like a pejorative. You know, actually woke people don't run around saying they're woke. They've just completely taken over that term. And I think we need to start to use it to embarrass them, because it's embarrassing when they say it. And Elon has really shown us his cards by saying the woke mind virus has to be crushed or nothing else matters. And he woke up and did that after getting booed at a Chappelle concert. And it was really embarrassing what happened to him. I mean, he just stood there like a deer in headlights, had nothing to say. At one point, he even asked Chappelle, "What should I say?" And that's awkward and weak and troubling. And I'm at a point now where, I don't feel good about using Twitter, but this is what we tweeted this week. And, this is kind of how I feel about it, that staying on Twitter under Musk is kind of like staying in the country under Trump or staying in Tennessee under Bill Lee in this oppressive Tennessee Republican supermajority. We prefer to stay and push back. Leaving helps all the wrong people. That's kind of how I feel about it. It's like Twitter's a powerful tool. It feels like they want to push us off that tool, that they want to push us to self-silence, and leaving would help them. It's like when they say, well, leave the country or leave the state. No, I'm not going to do either of those things. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to push back. I'm going to use this powerful tool to shine a light on injustices in our country and in our state. And that's how I feel about it. Now, I understand people leaving. I understand people not wanting to contribute to this guy's bottom line and be around the hate that is starting to proliferate there. But that's where I'm at right now. And none of the alternatives have really taken its place yet. Melinda says woke means nothing when you get 20 different definitions from 20 different people. It's stupid. Absolutely right. Bobby again says they need to define it. I asked them what it means to them and they look silly. Right, because they don't actually want to tell you what it really means. Like, I think we kind of all know what it really means, but they don't want to say that out loud. Like, it's basically that they're against all the forms that the civil rights movement has now taken. It's not as overt as it used to be. Now it's, wokeness is removing Confederate monuments and declaring that systemic racism is a real thing, or, sticking up for trans folks, which is a civil rights issue. So they don't really want to tell you what it is, but we all know what it is. And I consider myself proudly woke. I don't say that. I don't use that word, but like anytime someone uses that as a negative, I just says more about them than it does about us. And I encourage everybody to stop shying away from that, because it gives that term power. And it's like socialism. It's like what they call everything socialism that they don't like. And it just loses its meaning. So make them define it. They hide in the generalities. Make them get specific. What are you against? Specifically, what really bothers you? And I think that's what we need to dig. In time, it will switch, says Bobby. You're on the front edge of this. Appreciate that. But, I think people are seeing through Elon's bullshit. And this was move that banner. This was a Australian publication saying Twitter files are becoming Elon's QAnon. So people are seeing through this guy. And then another thing about Elon is that Elon Jet, which is a account on there that tracks his private jet, they shadow banned Elon Jet. So again, he's not on Twitter to erase lines. He's on there to be the one to draw them. So he's not some like free speech absolutist. He just wants to do all the things that they've accused other people of doing, but he wants to do them his own way to push his own agenda. New York Magazine said the Twitter files is what it claims to expose. Exactly. It's selective amplification, selective throttling and all of the things that it's claiming to expose, which were things that we knew Twitter was doing. It was in their bylines. It was in their user manual. When Marcia says the Twitter files prove what conservatives knew all along, we fixed that for her. We said it rehashes what was already public. And so Twitter files are not what they say it is. And it's embarrassing. But one of the things that it shows is the two different realities that we live in. Because while many of us, I would say most of us, either are not aware of the Twitter files or are aware of them and know that, there's not much there. Not to say Twitter didn't do anything wrong, that they did. They've acknowledged that in some ways. But meanwhile, the people who follow Elon and the Fox News group and the MAGA folks, like, to them, the Twitter files is this explosive thing that now shows proves what they already knew, that the election was stolen. And we just have two different information cycles. So I don't know how you get past that, honestly, other than talking to each other, which has become harder and harder lately. Patty says he said he wanted free speech, then squashes what he doesn't like. Exactly. Bobby is a Tesla owner, he says, and he wishes he could get his money back, but he can't sell when it's down. Oh, no, you own the stock. I got you. Yeah, I know. That's tough at this point. But again, we're just in these two different bubbles. It's hard to talk to each other. I have trouble too. I can't get people to come on here and talk to me. I invite people to come on and talk to me. Put the number up again. If anybody's watching that wants to talk, let's do it. I go on a Fox Nashville show and talk to some Republicans sometimes. But it feels like the only way that we get through this division of information is with conversations, and it's getting harder and harder. And our enemies know that. This is how they sow division. Brittany Griner coming home. A lot of people were mad that Paul Whelan wasn't also coming home, the ex-Marine. And Newsmax asked his sister about it, and she didn't take the bait. And she said basically why they sent Brittany Griner and not Paul Whelan is to sow that division, because that division is what Russia delights in. They know that division is what's killing us, and they're going to keep hammering at it over and over and over again. And we have to figure out a way to not let that work. And I'd be lying if I said I had the answer for that right now. But the Paul Whelan thing, again, he says his brother says Trump appears to have mentioned his brother's wrongful detention more now than he did in the 2 years he was president. And then Pence was asked about this. Basically, the question is, was Trump offered a deal for Whelan that he turned down, which Bolton says he was, and Pence didn't deny it.
An interview with CBS, the former national security advisor during the Trump administration, John Bolton, said that President Trump turned down a swap of Paul Whelan for Victor about 2 years ago. He told CBS, quote, "The possibility of a boot for Whelan trade existed back then, and it wasn't made for very good reasons having to deal with Victor Boot." Is that true?
Well, I would defer to John in his role as national security advisor, but it just wasn't our approach. We weren't in the business of prisoner swaps. We weren't in the.
Okay, so there you have it. Pence is basically telling you that as they're ripping Biden for making this deal and not getting Whelan back, they were offered a deal like that and chose to leave Whelan. So I just think it's important to point that out, to arm you all with that knowledge. 45 didn't bring him home, but you didn't hear that, right? So again, it just goes back to the hypocrisy of it all. Basically, just anything Biden does is bad, And, both sides are guilty of it to some extent, but I just find that, we're in a world where it's really hard to get facts through to the MAGA world, and I don't know how to do it. Some of you, let's see, keeping Americans at each other's throats is what makes them feel safe. Exactly. Division is Republicans' #1 strategy. Patty appreciates our efforts. Thank you for that. And then Chris calls the red hat wearing domestic terrorists. When they were at the insurrection, they hate the truth. That's why they excuse their rubbish character by using their Sky Daddy. Oh, well, okay. I mean, you're not wrong that there is a religious element to this whole thing. And that's something that we see in our legislature very clearly. Tennessee is a theocracy. And they are now expanding their vouchers in Tennessee, these private school vouchers that are being used to dismantle public education. The war on education is kind of what this all boils down to, because, they think that public education is indoctrinating our kids when it's really educating our kids and giving them the tools they need to not fall for this stuff. So that's why they're trying to get to the root of it. That's why Governor Lee's agenda starts with public education, and something that we really have to be on guard for. These vouchers are already expanding. They've been there for a year. It's what everybody warned about. They're coming for the children's minds, and we have to stay, to bring it full circle, woke and awake. Thank you guys for following. Make sure you put some pressure on Mark Green to answer for that. And next time, there's the number. I'm going to give you guys a few seconds here in case somebody wants to call in. So far, we've only had one call in our entire existence, and that was my buddy Gapper. But if any of you want to call in, I'm giving you one more minute. Call the number, say anything that's on your mind, see if it works, and if it doesn't, maybe we'll get you next time. But I do appreciate you following, and tnholler.com is where you can subscribe. See you next time.